Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Cypher of Smeg, but you guys can call me Cypher. So today I wanted to talk about something that's been bothering me for a little while. And I was tempted to talk about it when the new heads came out. And those who don't know, these are the new Ultramarine heads. And as you can see, some of them aren't your traditional Space Marine heads. They haven't got the strong angular features of a Space Marine. They've got slightly softer, more, as you could say, feminine features. Now, I think this, when this initially hit, I initially thought this was just people making mountains out of molehill. That this probably was just, a variation of faces that were painted a bit weird and maybe just done a little bit differently, which I can completely appreciate. No problem with that at all. Although I have no idea why you'd want to buy a load of, unhelmeted heads. But some people, Space Wolf players, etc., have different opinions to me. I personally think if you're going into battle wearing anything but, the helmet that's designed for you, then you're a bit of a fool. But that's my own personal opinion. But what I want to talk about today is this. This is the Emperor's "They shall know no fear" speech. But for those of you that have been in the hobby for a little while, you might notice it's slightly different. And that's because it is. Ever so slightly. This wording's been altered slightly, and I'm not too sure where GW wanted to go with this. So this version says, "They shall be my finest warriors. Like clay I shall mould them, and in the furnace of war forge them. They shall be of iron will and steel sinew. In great armour I shall clad them, and with the mightiest weapons they will be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness shall blight them. They shall have such tactics, strategies, and machines that no foe can best them in battle. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my Space Marines, and they shall know no fear. The Emperor of humankind." Now, sounds alright, doesn't it? Can't fault it. But you can when you look at the original text. Now, this I pulled directly from 10th edition Codex Space Marines. So this isn't 2nd edition or 3rd edition where things have changed over time. This was made, 2 years ago now at the point of this recording? And this reads, "They shall be my finest warriors, these men who will give themselves to me." So for those of you keeping score, that's already one section of the sentence pulled out. "Like clay I shall mould them, and in the furnace of war I shall forge them." Slight variation in the wording there, but basically the same as the newer one. "They will be of iron will and steely muscle." And again, they've swapped muscle out for sinew. Not a massive change, nothing too bad there. "In great armour I shall clad them, and with the mightiest guns shall they be armed." Now, the newest one's changed to weapons rather than guns. I think guns has a certain elegance isn't the right word. A certain amount of punch to it that weapons doesn't. I think guns is a little bit better, but that might just be me being older, me enjoying the older work rather than weapons. Weapons does kind of make sense, so I'm not too hung up on that. "They will be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness shall blight them. No sickness will blight them." Again, slight difference in the wording. "They will have tactics, strategies, and machines such that no foe can best them in battle." I think that's near enough exactly the same. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my space marines, and they shall know no fear. The Emperor of Mankind. Now, there are some alterations, a little bit of grammatical changes in this that, I'll be honest, I prefer the older one, but if you prefer the new one, then I'm not going to judge you too much. But there's two main parts of this that have bothered me. And that's these men will give themselves to me. That has been completely removed from the newer one that was in White Dwarf 515, I believe. Now, that in itself isn't too bad. But when you combine it with the fact that there's been rumours about Femstartes, female space marines, the changes that they made to the custodian guard, or the Legio Custodes, sorry, again I'm slipping into all vernacular. The Legio Custodes, and the fact that they've brought out a load of new heads that looks questionably feminine. This looks a bit fishy to me. Now, I'm not going to turn around to you and say Games Workshop are slowly but surely filtering in stuff to allow for Femstartes to come in, but I'm not ruling it out either. There's also one other change that I didn't particularly like, and that's the removal of mankind. Now, I know it's a trope in feminist circles, and if you're that way inclined, then fair enough. But mankind does not mean man. When you use it in the context of mankind or humanity or anything along those lines, it means human being. It does not mean what dangles between your legs. Okay? The Emperor of Mankind means the Emperor of Humanity. So the change here that they've made is pointless, but I guarantee it's been done for a reason, to remove the word man, especially considering they've already removed the word men from the same text. This, comparatively, if you compared the old text to the new text, the older text it says men and mankind. The newer text is completely gender neutral, and I think honestly that's what they're going for. I hope they're not. I truly, truly, truly hope they don't. I've been in this hobby for 20 years. I love it. I love the lore. Well, I love the older lore. The newer lore's questionable, but the newer lore, the older lore was amazing. So this is what I think GW are doing, and it pains me. It really, truly does. They want to neutralize all the male aspects of this hobby, and I find that abhorrent. I find that just wrong, and I'll elaborate on why, because I know there's going to be people watching this video who are going, "Oh, Cypher, behave yourself. The fact that you can bring in female space marines and it won't be a big issue." I disagree wholeheartedly and completely, and I'll explain why. For Warhammer 40,000, space marines are at the very dead center. They are the largest seller. They're the thing that most people, they're the army that most people do at some point or another. But they are dead center of it. They are right at the middle of it. They are the epicenter of this entire universe that's been created. The Horus Heresy is the largest spectacle in the entire narrative because of the Space Marines, because it is the Adeptus Astartes. So when it comes to adding in female Space Marines, I think it's a problem. One, because the law has explicitly stated that female Space Marines can't be a thing. The fact that you've had 35 years, I think it is, 40k now, that have, or 10 editions, shall we just say, that have had male Space Marines only. Now, and I know people are going to say, oh, those female Space Marines in Rogue Trader. Yeah, they were retcon. Nothing that happened in first edition can you say is truly solid, because a lot of it was retconned, a lot of it was made up on the spot back in the day, and only the stuff that's truly set the test, stayed the test of time, can truly be regarded as canon. So I understand what you're saying, but in the same regard, no, that's not. It's not true. If you don't believe me, go and read every single codex since second edition, and they all say he or male. They use male pronouns to regard Space Marines. Every single book, every single codex. It's not even up for debate. If you're telling yourself it can be female Space Marine because there was in Rogue Trader, then you're gaslighting yourself. I'm sorry, but you are. And so when it comes to the Space Marines, if you add in female Space Marines, it's not just going to affect the tabletop, it's going to affect the lore. And because it's going to affect, because the main chunk of the lore is around Space Marines, much to the chagrin of most Xeno players, it's going to ripple out into the wider universe. So, and I'll explain. Now, when it comes to having a Space Marine army, so you out of universe, out of away from the lore, if you want to 3D print or buy a load of female heads, put them on your Space Marines and fight me in a game of 40k, not physically fight me, you can do that. I have not a single issue with that. It's your army. You can paint it, you can base it, you can customize it however the hell you want. It is yours. You can create your own headcanon for it. You can do whatever you want. I am not one of these people that thinks that you should have it painted to a, exactly how the codex says, or exactly how somebody else has told you to paint it. It's your army. You do what you want. If you want to have a load of Space Wolves that are painted red, you go for it. If you want a Dark Angels company that's flying a pride flag, then you go for it. It's your army, you can do what you want. I also don't think you've got the right to demand that people accept your army, but that's another tangent in itself. But if you want to do that, then you're more than welcome to. On the tabletop, in a personal game, it does not affect anything. However, Games Workshop are the arbiters of the law. The law as in the canon. It is their duty as custodians to make sure that the law does not get altered to a drastic degree, or if it is changed, it's been done responsibly. Now, they've already proven that they're no good at this. Since 2017, probably, something happened in Games Workshop, and the law has been problematic. The writers have been opinionated. It's probably the best word for it. And they've been making alterations to the law that have been drastic and badly thought through. Now, I've got my own opinion on Primaris Marines, and I will do a video about them one day, because I hate the law. The miniatures, amazing. And I think the law could have been twisted to work, but the actual law that GW came out with, it was absolutely horrendous. But when it comes down to female Space Marines, so let's say, and this is, I'll even give Games Workshop a hint of how they could do this. Now, we know from the Cypher book that whoever was in Cell 11 escaped, right? You could bring back the 11th Primarch as a female. Now, I know that there's going to be guys that are been in the hobby as long as me going, but no, Cypher, you can't say that because it's explicitly stated in the law. It's not. The Emperor had 20 sons. That bit is in the law. Okay? Now we know that Alfarius is a twin. That bumps the number up to 21. So who's to say 11 wasn't a female? We've already had the retcon of adding in the mother of the Primarchs. We've already had the retcon of Astartes being the person that created the Space Marines. It wasn't the Emperor, it was her. So why not just go the whole hog and add in the 11th Primarch as a female? That way, you've got a legitimized reason for having female Space Marines, because they're going to be the daughters of the 11th Primarch. Now, do I think GW should do this? Hell no. I think it's really, really bad writing to be able to do that. But it's at least a in-universe, legitimized way of doing it. The only other way I can honestly think of that fans would even accept is to have Call alter the genome to be able to create and clone a female Primarch of some kind, and then use her as an example, as a way of having female Primarchs, female Space Marines. I mean, that could work, or alter the genome so it works on everybody. But again, I think that's really lazy writing, and GW have proven that Crawl has become just a MacGuffin that they can use to create whatever the hell they want, which is okay for the Primaris Marines, because we kind of, even the people that don't like the lore, we kind of understood that the range needed to be refreshed and done. So, and some of the Primaris Marines are absolutely beautiful miniatures, but you can only play that game once or twice, and Call's doing enough in universe that you can't keep playing that game. So I don't think it'll work. But let's say either of those two options do happen, or a third option that I can't think of because I'm not a writer. Let's say a female Space Marine comes in. There's a rip in the warp, and one comes in from another dimension. We find out that the Emperor actually had a daughter that he had with a mortal wife, and she's a Primarch or something along those lines. There's loads of things you could do with it. A lot of them would be contrived, but you could do a lot. Let's say that happens. So now we've got female Space Marines. Now, depending on how they decide to integrate this will depend on how impactful it is on the lore. So let's, for argument's sake, use the Call example that all Space Marines now can be female. All Primarchs can have female Space Marines. So what would it look like if the Space Wolves started getting female members in their ranks? How would that impact the culture of the Fenrisian way of life in regards to the Space Wolves, or the Rout, or whatever you want to call them? Because any true soldier will tell you that when women are in their ranks, it is a significantly different situation than when it's a purely male demographic. Okay, and if you say it's not, then you're kidding yourself. I'm sorry, you are. Okay, I was in the army around the time when women were starting to be brought in. The standards were laxened off a little bit, so more women were filtering in, and having a single woman in the unit significantly changed the way people acted. So now let's dial that up to 11 in a grimdark future with superhuman warriors that, for lack of a better term, are asexual. Okay, because space, and I don't mean asexual in the way it's been used in our society. I mean asexual as in the fact that they don't understand sexuality. It is anathema to them. They are not human in the strictest sense. So they understand war. They've been indoctrinated to be loyal, and and depend on the chapter, they might be hyper religious. So they don't understand what sexuality is. Some of them, like Ragnar, I know have had sexual encounters, but you can't. That's not true for 99% of Space Marines. So they are not understanding that this person that's coming into their midst is different to them on a biological basis. So I don't think it would be difficult to explain how those two halves would mesh. Okay, and that's not even getting into the concept of what happens if a female space marine is captured by chaos. Because it's easy to we don't really talk about it much in regards to guardsmen and sisters of battle, because it's easy to gloss over it because they're a lower less books are made for them, so it's easier to gloss over it. But space marines are the main protagonists in most books, so you're gonna have to address it. What happens to a female space marine when she's captured? Or are we just going to ignore that? Is that too grimdark? And if it is too grimdark, and we know Games Workshop have been trying to dial back the grimdark, then why are you introducing female space marines? Surely you can just avoid that entire situation just by not introducing them. And there's one other aspect in regards to the space marines. So if we are now inducting female space marines, does that mean space marines can have children? Or are female space marines unable to have children? Like, we presume male space marines are, because this, as far as I know, hasn't ever really been discussed. Games Workshop actively skirt around whether space marines can have sex, or even if they have, the bits to have sex. So that's we're not too sure where a male stands on it. So are we going to know where a female stands on it, or are we going to just completely ignore the entire situation and just think that men and women can work, fight and die together irrespective of any biological or caveman instincts? Because it doesn't work in the real life. It doesn't work in the real world. I know it doesn't. So I refuse to believe it won't work in the 40k unless GW decide to BS their way around it. And then we go outside the Space Marines, the actual Loyalist Space Marines, we go further afield. So what kind of interaction are we going to have from Guardsmen? When a Guardsman turns around to a Space Marine and says, a good day, my lord. Is the female Space Marine now going to have to dress him down? Are they going to have to correct them? Because bearing in mind, most Guardsmen never see a Space Marine in their life. 99.9% of Guardsmen will never see a Space Marine in their entire lives. And they've been conditioned to think they're all male. Because they are. In the current law. So what will happen when one addresses a female Space Marine as my lord? And then they take off the helmet and... well, they probably won't look much different, but they have to correct them, say I'm a woman. Does that not fall into a bit of a cringy category that GW would be best off just to avoid by not introducing female Space Marines? And then what happens when one turns to chaos? Because it will. Women are not infallible. Women can turn to chaos too. So what if a female Space Marine turns to chaos? What if she turns to Slaanesh? Are we going to have a deep dive story about that kind of person? Because that's a lot more risky than a male. And I don't think GW has the stones to do that. Especially considering they've been, for lack of a better term, kidifying 40k. They've making it less grimdark, less brutal, and a little bit more Saturday morning cartoon, which I can understand from a financial perspective, but I also don't think it's a good idea for the hobby. But that's my personal opinion. So what they're going to do in regards to that? Are they just going to again ignore that? There are so many aspects of adding female Space Marines into the lore that GW have to gloss over or just not address, that I think it becomes more problematic than it truly needs to be. And that's my, in a very condensed, I know it's nearly been half an hour, but that's my thoughts about inducting female Space Marines. I think GW, if they are doing what a lot of people in the hobby suspect they're doing, and that's soft introducing female Space Marines by neutralizing language, by adding in more feminine looking Space Marines, and by altering the way we see them. I think that's what they're eventually moving up to, and if they do, I think it'll be more problems than they think it will be, and you're definitely going to lose people, especially the older demographics. I think are definitely going to pull back out of it. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going, "Oh, fragile masculinity, blah blah blah." No, it's not. It's nothing to do with that. We just don't like when Warhammer gets altered on the Warhammer gets sacrificed on the altar of inclusivity. 40k isn't about inclusivity. The law, at least. I'll elaborate on that one. The law of 40k is not about inclusivity. In fact, it's about adversity, and it's about striving despite the fact that deck is stacked against you. To be a man in such times is to be one amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. These are the tales of those times. Forget the power of technology and science, for so much has been forgotten, never be to relearned. Forget the promise of progress and understanding, for in the grim dark future there is only war. There is no peace amongst the stars, only an eternity of carnage, slaughter, and laughter of thirsty gods. That has been in the front of every single Warhammer book for as long as I've been a fan. And to try and make such a thing light-hearted and cartoony is just silly, because the grim darkness is what makes 40k 40k. And to try and alter that and try and induct feminism and equality into every level of it doesn't speak to the actual law and feel of the universe. Men have always, despite what some people might state or think, men have always been the protectors and the ones that go to war. Space Marines are the antithesis of that. And yes, it might not fit with our current feminist liberal view, but the 41st millennium, or 42nd now, doesn't care. The Tyranid doesn't care. The Orcs, Chaos, and all other Xenos and Heretics of Light battle against the Space Marines, and to alter the Space Marines, the very linchpin of 40k, is a mistake I don't think GW honestly come back from. Because what they are is perfect, and you shouldn't mess with something if it's not broken. That's all I have to say for today. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in, and I hope you have a good day. Goodbye.